is done, we will no longer have the type of cases you are saying that we take half-baked cases to court.
Thank you very much, Emily. So you are promising us no more headline cases. Now, Florence, your commission has a very key responsibility of ensuring that there is access to information. And you have the Information Act. What has your commission done to ensure that that act is operational so that the citizens can be able to access information and rightfully be able to hold their governments to accountability?
Thank you, Chair. At the Commission on Administrative Justice, we have 2 acts, and the latest act that we got when we came in as commissioners was the Access to Information Act that had been passed in Parliament in 2016 through a private member's bill, Honorable Nyokabi. And one of the requirements of that act was that once the new commissioners came in, being the commission, CAJ being the commission that is supposed to oversight and implement and enforce this act, then we had to adhere to what the act said, and the first thing we did was to designate one of the commissioners as the Commissioner on Access to Information. We were able to get Commissioner Lucy Dongo, who is in this gathering. Maybe she can stand up because she'll be doing some of the things that we're asking for. That's Commissioner Dongo, who is in charge of implementing the Access to Information Act. We realized also that there were no regulations, because for an act to be operationalized, there must be regulations. So we engaged the Ministry of ICT, because Section 25 requires that the Commission works in collaboration with the Ministry of ICT, and we agreed that we form a task force that is going to ensure that the draft regulations have been prepared so that they can be taken to Parliament through the Committee on Delegated Legislation for ratification and for the Act to become operational. We have the task force that is chaired by Commissioner Lucy, and also as the Minister of ICT nominee, and the other ministries, and especially the Kenya Law Reform Commission. We already have the draft regulations. We are waiting to have an agreement with the minister so that we can have them passed and make sure that the act is enforced. Now, this act, the Access to Information, much as we didn't have regulations, we did not sit down and say that we are not going to do anything. We decided to speak to the county governments, and we asked the county governments to send their information officers to us as the commission for purposes of training, to enlighten them, to get to know there is an Access to Information Act that they must adhere to. The purpose of this training was for us to be able then to talk to the governors and tell them, much as we are training your information officers, we need an Access to Information officer who is going to be in charge of implementing the Access to Information Act, because we oversight the national government and we oversight the county governments in as far as the implementation of this act is concerned. We trained the 44 of the counties, gave us their information officers, we were able to train them, and we are consulting with the counties to be able to see how we can move forward. We've also had major discussions with Parliament so that once we take the regulations, then they are able to ensure that they are passed and then they can be operational. The other thing that we've done is be able to do a lot of public awareness, because not many people know that this law exists, and it is the right of Kenyans to access information, because it's a constitutional right under Article 35, and it's a Bill of Rights. So we are trying to also work with the counties, and I've done outreach programs. I've been able to visit several counties that with governors we've sat down and agreed on how to work in as far as this access to information is concerned. We have also been working with development partners. I'm happy that I can see Tisa Wajiro is here. we've been working with her and other development partners to see how we are able to ensure the Access to Information Act is concerned. All I can say for now is that our dear county governments, you're supposed to release information to the people as and when they ask for it. And one of the issues that were raised here is that normally we don't release information on the 30% procurement. How are you giving it to the women? Are you giving it to the youth? Or are you giving it to the disabled or the marginalized persons? So once we make this act operational, then we are going to come back to the counties and make sure that this happens within your counties, because then it is part of the devolution that we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Wanjiro, as the Institute of Social Accountability, now you've been generating reports based on your work on social accountability. How has the reception been with the county governments? And what has your institution done in the last 1 year? 3 things that have ensured that you enrich these reports and actually you improve accountability.
Thank you very much. First of all, how have counties responded? I think there's still a big fear about social accountability, because social accountability is about operationalizing Article 1 on the direct sovereignty of citizens, and they can then exercise that sovereignty by holding their leaders to account, because social accountability is about citizens holding their leaders to account. It's about that responsiveness. It's about government giving access to the information so that citizens are able to ask informed questions. It's about an enabling environment where government is doing the necessary capacity building so that citizens understand, who do I ask when I'm looking for the 30% procurement? It's about good partnerships with civil society. So there is a misconception, and there is also maybe the historic culture where government has not really come on board of the agenda, not recognizing that social accountability will assist in dealing with the issues like we had before, vandalism of government projects. If you don't have citizen ownership, you then don't have sustainability of development projects. So I would say there's been a culture of fear and resistance, and also a culture of misunderstanding. Social accountability is not just about corruption, it's about the exercise of sovereignty. It's about national values under Article 10, objects of devolution on democratic governance, social accountability, public finance. But this manifests mainly, the challenges come about, I could mention maybe in 3 practical ways. Access to information has already been mentioned. Access to information in terms of some information is not available, especially procurement information. Budget information is increasingly available. That's a good thing, the budget reports. But because of the program-based budgeting, partly also because of IFMIS, the kind of information that's then given to citizens is not actionable, it's not specific enough, it's not showing which project at what level, what specifically was done, it's so generalized. So some counties are proactively going beyond IFMIS and disaggregating data to enable citizens to follow projects. In fact, you'll be maybe not surprised, but it's still sad, 6 years into devolution, you go to the sub-county administration, which under the County Government Act is supposed to enable public participation. It's their responsibility. They often have no idea what's going on. They're usually the last to know. In fact, civil society is the one usually that updates sub-county administration in some of the counties where really those structures have not been operationalized. What else are we finding with social audit reports or scorecard reports?
We welcome the Right Honorable Prime Minister. Raila Odinga is in the house.
It should be his agenda.
Let's continue now. Jiro.
So one of the impediments we are having with social accountability is lack of access to information, is lack of decentralization. You cannot have effective social accountability, which is citizen engagement, if counties are still centralizing procurement, centralizing information, centralizing all the decision making. So I'm hoping that there'll be a resolution here. Let us decentralize, let that decision making responsibility and information get closer to the citizen. We have weak uptake of the social audit reports. So civil society goes through a lot of pain because it's a lot of pain. The transactional costs are extremely high. You almost beg government. In fact, at some point I was telling my officers, 40% of their time is spent at the county office because they have to find that officer, to tell this officer, so that to find the letter. You know, this process is extremely long. But even after this report is prepared, there is no linkage to the oversight. So there is no uptake with the oversight institutions. So there is a need to institutionalize social accountability, which is provided in the Constitution. Of course, sometimes social accountability is being used politically. Social accountability should never be about personalities. It should never be about politics. It's supposed to be objective, and those who undertake social accountability are supposed to be impartial and evidence-driven. So the idea of politicizing social accountability actually is killing a very important pillar of effective devolution. What have the successes been? We've seen, very interestingly, when you open up the space, and it's not a surprise, citizens know what they want, and they come up with very concrete recommendations. And in cases where governments are listening, because they are listening, they are able to reprioritize what the government had determined. For instance, moving money maybe from capital projects into non-communicable diseases, moving money from, especially you find citizens will be talking about their need, and usually that need is not in line with what government thinks citizens want to see, the political projects. So we have actually seen reprioritization towards the softer issues. This brings about a need maybe to think about this 30% development fiscal requirement, because that 30% is being defined as capital projects. And sometimes what you need is more nurses, is more training, is more medicine, which is dealt with under recurrent expenditure. And I think the Auditor General Controller Budget had said they are going to help this discussion so that we can stop doing politics with development and thinking if you put up a stadium, you've done better than if you clean the river. And if you train people, these are soft things that are not very visible, but they have long-term sustainability.
Thank you.
The other thing we are seeing, if you'll just allow me, of course we see completion of projects, because once projects are known, then people are watching. So it is so basic. Can we have those signboards of projects? Can we have those lists so that government can say, this is what we are doing? Administrator has that information, the county sector officers have it, citizens have it, so that they can watch and ensure this project is 10 million, it has started here, this is where it will finish. We are also seeing a deepening of civic education. There are 4 counties that have really embraced social accountability, and I'm using a lot of their evidence: Elgeyo Marakwet, Baringo, Nakuru, and Makueni. And what happens, the moment they start, they realize, we thought we are just doing social accountability, but we need to put more money into civic education so that citizens are more effectively engaging with government. Last one, there are innovations that are coming out. We are seeing citizen budget.
Auditor General, when you audit counties, you actually find that there are professionals who do this work. We have accountants, we have engineers, we have doctors, all manner of professionals. As you make your last comment, how have you dealt with ensuring that a profession in the county doesn't have misconduct and then continues in that county or in another county still performing as an engineer or as an accountant? Auditor General.
Thank you very much, Moderator. First of all, I think that question really is part of professional, ethics, and it's one which is being actively handled by the ISPAC, Institute of Certified Public Accountants, of which some of my staff sit on the committees. So we are handling that in that context. But now that I have the mic, let me just pick up some of the things which I think Senator Mutula talked about and raised, which are very important so far as concerned the oversighting of the county. I think there are certain things which we must look at, apart from the county assembly PAGs. We must look at the whole, this idea of the audit committees, internal auditors and all that. And I think we need to have a regime which is regulated under an act on especially how the counties are going to constitute the public or the accounting, the internal auditors and the committees. That's one thing which we should look at, because I think they need to be independent enough or appointed in a manner that they are independent and they can work objectively. If that's not going to happen, then the whole system is still going to fail, because they are very core institutions to help the county assemblies interrogate some of the reports which I give. The other thing is, I must say now that we need to make sure the work of the Senate is value-adding.